Sullivan or it was somebody that got an email, and they said they would pass it up the chain, and somebody made the decision not to send the FEST team, which would have been, as Secretary of State, I would think, since it was a State Department-led mission, that would have been the first thing that you would have wanted to get out. But instead, if I understand correctly from the email chain, your first request was to see how soon the FBI could get over there. Is that a true statement?
Well, Congressman, the FEST went to East Africa to help rebuild our embassy capacity. They have expertise in once our 2 embassies were bombed, how do we regain communications, for example? We were not going to rebuild in Benghazi, so there was no reason to send a FEST team. There was a reason to try to get the FBI investigators into Benghazi as soon as it was safe for them to go, so they could start to try to build a case so we could bring the perpetrators of the attack to justice. That was absolutely the primary goal that we had in working with the FBI. And I think it's, when we make a decision on a deployment of the FEST, it is not just the Secretary of State. In this case, there was the NSC involved, there was the CIA involved, there was a civets about it, and the considered conclusion was we're not going to rebuild in Benghazi. So yes, we did.
Well, that was a quick decision to make that night, that you were not going to rebuild in Benghazi.
Well, the FEST would not have. There was nothing to rebuild.
But you just mentioned all the agencies that would have been important to get on the ground as quick as possible and summarize what the situation was to give you that direction. But I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to say what Ms. Roby was trying to get you to say is, what decisions did you make in regard to Benghazi, and what were you responsible to make? And I think that's what all of us want to know. What did you do? And what decisions did you make? And you said everybody else is responsible for everything else. What were you responsible for?
I was responsible for sending Chris Stevens to Benghazi as an envoy. I was responsible for supporting a temporary mission that we were constantly evaluating to determine whether it should become permanent in Benghazi. I was responsible for recommending Chris Stevens to be the ambassador. I was responsible for working on the policy both before and after the end of the Gaddafi regime. I was responsible for quite a bit, Congressman. I was not responsible for specific security requests and decisions. That is not something I was responsible for.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair will now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, we're now almost at the end of the second round of questions, and I find it necessary to amend something I said after the first round, and that is, I don't understand the core theory of this case. I thought I did, but after this round, I honestly don't understand where my colleagues are coming from. I'm probably not as good a lawyer, undoubtedly not as good a prosecutor as our chairman. Most of what we've gone over in this round, frankly, were questions that were asked to you when you testified before the House the last time, before you testified before the Senate. They were the subject of the ARB report. But there were a few unique lines of questioning that I want to comment and ask you about. One of my colleagues spent his time asking about some of your interactions with your press people, I guess critiquing your overall Libya strategy and something he called the Clinton Doctrine. We've been assured this committee, contrary to what Representative McCarthy said, is not about attacking you. But frankly, I don't see the relevance of any of those questions in terms of what actually happened in Benghazi, except as a means of trying to attack you or make a political statement regarding the presidential campaign. And then there was the continuing preoccupation with Sidney Blumenthal. The chairman spent both panels asking you about Sidney Blumenthal, and I have to say, I just don't understand the preoccupation with Sidney Blumenthal. You would think for the time we've spent on him that he was in Benghazi on the night manning the barricades. There is not a member on this dais that doesn't have friends they've known for a long time that send them unsolicited emails, and we're too polite to write back saying,